Okay, so things are not looking good for Hybe right now. Like at all. This time, it's for alleged financial fraud. And the scandal is reaching all the way up to the top. To none other than Bang Si-hyuk himself. A door executive are resigning and Hanni comments about the company is resurfacing from the press conference. Search and seizure notices against the executives are being issued, including Bang Si-hyuk, and how all this can affect BTS. We are going to discuss all of this in this video. So first off, Korean authorities recently carried out a full-on search and seizure operation at Hybe's headquarters in Seoul. Why? Because one of their employees, who Hybe claims is now a former employee, real convenient, allegedly used insider info to illegally profit off stock trades. Specifically, he bought up shares of YG Plus in early 2021, right before Hybe made a big investment in that company. Thanks to that little trick, he allegedly made around 240 million won, which is about $175,000 USD. Not pocket change. Hybe did respond to that part, saying they're cooperating with the authorities and that the guy isn't even working there anymore. Case closed? Not even close, because now things get messier. It turns out that the Financial Supervisory Service, FSS, is also investigating Bang Si-hyuk himself. It is alleged that one day before Big Hit, which is now called Hybe, went public in 2019, Bang Si-hyuk gathered the early investors of Big Hit and said, "There are no plans for Big Hit to go public." But it was a lie. Behind the scenes, they were preparing for the IPO. IPO stands for Initial Public Offering. It's when a private company, like Hybe, sells its shares to the public for the first time, officially becoming a publicly traded company on the stock market. Basically, a company goes from being owned by a few people to being owned by public investors. Companies usually do an IPO to raise money, expand, or pay off debt. In Hybe's case, their IPO happened in October 2020, and it was a huge deal in Korea because BTS was at their peak, and everyone wanted a piece of the company behind them. And it is alleged that Bang PD was trying to get the early investors who had invested in the company to sell their Big Hit shares by lying to them that they aren't going public. The investors who trusted Bang Si-hyuk ended up selling their shares, and they sold those shares to specific private equity funds. And there were 3 private equity funds, PEFs, that bought up these shares at around 30,000 to 40,000 won per share. And very coincidentally, these private equities were founded by people close to Bang Si-hyuk. On October 15, 2020, Hybe officially entered the Korean stock market and was listed on the Kospi, which is Korea's main stock exchange, kind of like Korea's version of the New York Stock Exchange. Their offering price, basically the price per share that they first sold to the public, was 135,000 won. But here's the crazy part. On the very first day of trading, Hybe's stock price skyrocketed, rising 150% above its offering price at one point. That means investors were so hyped about the company, mostly thanks to BTS, that the stock opened way higher than expected. It was one of the most talked about IPOs in Korea. To give you perspective, offering price 135,000 won. At its peak on day 1, it reached about 351,000 won, 135k plus 150%. That's a massive debut. It meant huge loss for early investors who sold their shares just for 30 to 40,000 because Bang Si-hyuk said they aren't going public. Their shares worth triple the amount now, and Hybe raised a ton of money that way. Specifically, Bang Si-hyuk make around 400 billion won. How basically, those private equity funds, they dumped their shares almost immediately, made massive profits, reportedly over 1 trillion won, and then just shut down. Now here's the really dirty part. There was allegedly a secret agreement between Bang and these funds, never disclosed to financial authorities, saying, "If the IPO succeeds, you give me 30% of the profit. And if it fails, Bang Si-hyuk will buy all those shares himself from these people." And boom. That's how Bang Si-hyuk allegedly made around 400 billion won. That's over $290 million. His close friends in the funds, they also walked away with tens and hundreds of billions. And again, these funds didn't even exist long term. One of them was created just a year before the IPO and shut down the year after. Now that this has come to light, both the Financial Supervisory Service, FSS, and the Korean police are investigating Bang Si-hyuk for fraud and illegal trading practices. And if found guilty, he could face up to life in prison. So yes, Hybe isn't just dealing with internal drama now. This could shake the company from the top down. According to reports, the Seoul police have already stepped up and applied for a search and seizure warrant targeting Bang. And it's not just some casual questioning. We're talking witness testimonies and circumstantial evidence that triggered this move. Hybe hasn't even officially responded to the warrant against Bang Si-hyuk yet. They're staying quiet, silent, zip. But netizens, they are not staying quiet. People have been pointing out that Lee Kyung-jun, Hybe's former CFO, and also a board member at A.I.D.le, the label behind Newjeans, suddenly resigned when the investigation started. Hybe's downplaying it, saying he's just a former exec now, but fans aren't buying it. The comments online? Brutal. Some people are saying things like, I hope all of them end up penniless. This whole crew needs to be investigated. Hybe's always like this. People just vanish when things go bad. Look at how they deceived the shareholders. The stock was 350,000 won on the first day of listing, but when they dumped all those shares, the price crashed to 150,000 won. And they say it's not a legal problem? So from now on, any company going public can do the same thing to make money and it's fine? The shareholder agreement clearly had a negative impact on the stock price and caused financial harm to many small shareholders. I'm just speechless. This is a much more serious case than Newjeans, but it doesn't seem to get as much attention. We believe in money. This is way worse than Newjeans. Why is everyone so quiet about this? Economic crime is serious, damn it. This is more important than Newjeans, but stuff like this always stays quiet. While all this is happening, people are still saying things like poor Hybe. They're pushovers. Should they be classified as the same as boy crazies? After doing all that, they tried to boost the stock price again by doing some NFT business, and the executives sold their shares. Everything that blew up last year was seriously bad, so regardless of Newjeans, I was already convinced Hybe was doomed. I'm really amazed at how this is being buried. This isn't just about getting punished. It should be dealt with very strictly. There were a lot of issues back then too, so why is it only coming out now? The BTS stockpiling scandal and all, they had so many things swept under the rug at the time. Please, let this investigation be clean and free of corruption this time. Stock manipulators should be sentenced to death. They won't do things like that if they can't use the money they earn. Hyuk, Hybe, do you think contracts are a joke? And is the law a joke? I feel bad for Theku for thinking that Bang Si-hyuk was the pushover. Also, Newjeans' Hanni comments about the company is being brought up again. During the press conference, Hanni discussed the reasons for the termination of their contracts, calling out A.I.D.le for no longer having any sincerity in the art of music. A company that no longer has any sincerity in the art of music. A company that only has thoughts about making money, and don't have any conscience about the negative effect they create through their non-authentic means. They don't care what truth is conveyed as long as their idol is okay. They are afraid that when the agency that houses their idol falls, their idol's fate will suffer the same fate. That's why they will continue to support the agency, whether it is right or wrong. The fact that Hanni clocked Hybe's fraudulence 6 months ago and no one listened to her. The public is demanding transparency, accountability, and real answers. Because when you've got multiple investigations, a sudden exec resignation, and your chairman being probed for fraud, it's a potential corporate meltdown. And now? How is this whole mess gonna affect BTS's comeback? Even if BTS had literally nothing to do with any of this, people will still associate them with Hybe. They're the ones who built that company. Like, let's be real. Without BTS, Hybe wouldn't even be on the map. So if Hybe starts looking shady, it's gonna reflect back on BTS, especially to the general public or international media who don't know the full story. And we all know the boys are expected to reunite in June after finishing military service, right? But if Hybe's leadership is falling apart, or worse, facing lawsuits and criminal trials, that whole comeback could get messy. Like, delayed, poorly planned, or just overshadowed by all this drama. And fans are already side-eyeing the company. So if this gets worse, you bet armies are gonna start pushing for BTS to just leave Hybe altogether. Also, let's not forget, Jungkook, Jin, RM, Suga, they all own Hybe stocks. That was part of their contract. So if the stock price crashes because of this fraud investigation, yeah, they're losing millions, even though they did nothing wrong. And personally, I feel like Hybe is totally going to use BTS as a human shield during this. Like, look at BTS. Support their comeback. Ignore the fraud. They've managed to keep this IPO scandal hidden for years, and now that it's finally being investigated by Korean law enforcement, they're definitely going to lean on BTS to distract the public. Let's see what happens. If anything major breaks, I'll keep you guys posted. Also, side note, but not really a side note, during this whole mess, some of the OG big hit employees, like the ones who were there before BTS blew up, came forward saying they were basically betrayed. Some said they were pressured into quitting, or tricked into giving up stock options right before Hybe went public. One of them was a female director who actually helped push BTS into the Western market. And get this, a lot of these people were long gone before Minheejin ever stepped into the picture, and they're still taking her side. And there's more tea apparently. Some Hybe employees dumped their stocks right before BTS announced their military enlistment, basically to dodge losses, like pure insider trading. The prosecution is already on it, and at their first trial, those employees denied everything. But let's be honest, the timeline is suspicious. and the prosecution's saying this wasn't even the first time they've done this. So yeah, Hybe might be in way deeper than they're letting on.